Hey guys, what's happening? So with us jumping back into the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, for part 5, we continue Peter's challenges with him facing the 8 Scions of Sidorak, and it's come to the point now where this challenge just may have broken Peter. Cause the other ones were tough, but this one right here, man, this one right here, it literally hits different. So with that said, I got the full playlist down in the description. If you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so in our last talk, we saw Peter take on Calyx, which was probably one of the fastest matches we've seen thus far, with Peter beating this guy into submission, only to then realize that he has to face his twin sister, Syra, right after, with no break in between. But before they get started, Syra starts to go on about how pointless she thinks all of this is, and how she believes it's all just a waste of time, and how the Covenant is nothing but the echoes of 2 egos in collision, and also how when it's all said and done, they're pretending as if any of this matters. Which on one hand, that's the point that she wants to communicate to Peter, and we'll talk about how she tries to in a minute, but regardless of how she feels about it, she knows that they have to go through with it. It's inevitable. So Peter tries to tell her that she can quit, because her twin brother who's laying on the ground, he said that defeat was inevitable. And mind you, while Calyx is laying there, he's still talking trash. But the thing is, it's impossible to lay in this position that he's doing and talk tough to anybody. But as Syra goes on to tell Peter that she's not like her brothers who crave her father's favor, and how she'd much rather be drawing a bath and having some wine right now, Peter realizes here that she's different from the other Scions. And like we talked about before, this is something we knew, because unlike her siblings who are looking to gain favor or power promotion from their father Sidorak, more than anything else, Syra wants freedom. And I mean, she doesn't go into that here, but because we know this already, we know that she's being genuine with Peter. But in the middle of their talk, Calyx is just like, eviscerate him, Syra. He's just laying there like, avenge me. And at the same time, both Syra and Peter tell him to shut up. Because Peter's like, shut it, tinfoil Loki. And Syra's like, silence, scion of dog, bleepity bleep. Which, I mean, that's more or less the PG version. But she even gives Peter his props here, because she's like, tinfoil Loki, man, it wasn't that bad. It's a worthy jape. But this has caused Peter to be comfortable enough to tell her like he doesn't want to die again. So Syra tells him, I am certain that is true. Are you ready? So next Peter prepares a spell to get ready for the 2 of them to fight, only for Syra to tell him that this isn't that type of challenge, but instead all he needs to do is hold this spear until he can no longer bear it. But if he sets it down, the challenge is over and she wins. So Peter asks her like, what's the catch? Does it burn with the heat of 1,000 suns or something? So she tells him the sphere shows only truth. I have found that truth is unbearable for your kind. And at first this kind of had me like, oh man, that's it? Like, give me a few of these. Like, I know a couple people who would just burst into flames if I handed it to them. Like an Indiana Jones movie. But at the same time, this doesn't tell Peter how does he win. Because just holding this sphere and never putting it down, that sounds a little weird. There's gotta be something else to it. So she tells him to hold on to the sphere until it has nothing left to share. So now that gives Peter enough information to know like, okay, there's a starting and an end point. Which again, is something that's not completely certain, but it's enough to have Peter like, okay, well, let's just get this over with. And what ends up happening is this sphere, it goes on to show him the deaths of the people closest to him, starting with Aunt May, where in her case, this mysterious plague sweeps across the earth, catching officials and health experts off guard, which later on is referred to as the Essex virus, with it going on to kill over 3 million people. And it's a bad situation for Aunt May, since she's a cancer survivor, so it goes on to cause complications with her breathing, and it comes to the point to where when May gets the news that there's really nothing left that the doctors can do for her, she then gets moved to a triage, where she can be made comfortable until she eventually dies among strangers. And as she gets taken away, you can also see Philip Coulson, who's currently taking the place of Mistress Death. So right there, you pretty much know what this means for Aunt May. And it's crazy even seeing this one too, because it just reminds me of back in 2020. When my mom passed, I flew up to Boston to see her, and every time I went to visit her, I had to put on these same suits these doctors was wearing. Face masks, goggles, gloves, and all that. Except the suit I had to wear was white, not yellow. But yeah, that was a tough time. But right here, Peter's just like, inevitability of death, that's your kink. I've suffered more loss than you know, lady. I can watch sad movies about my life. And right there, I'm just like, you tell her, Peter, let her know. I've seen the Bone Thugs and Harmony Crossroads video. This is nothing. So next, the sphere takes Peter over to MJ in her final moment, which is in a fight where the 2 of them are facing the Hobgoblin, and MJ is still doing the jackpot thing. But what's seen is Peter's told that in MJ's final moments, she looks back on her life and the decisions made, and she wonders had she done things differently, would her life have turned out better? But ultimately, when she dies unfulfilled and dissatisfied. So now this just has Peter like, I get this game. Who can get bored first? Cool, I'm winning. The future isn't written. This is all just emo fan fiction. So Syra's just like, sure, there's countless ways that MJ could die either tomorrow or when she's 94. What is indisputable, however, is that her life will end. So Peter's just like, I know that. That's just common knowledge. So Syra tells him yes, but now you feel it, which is really the kicker when it comes down to showing Peter all of this, because everyone knows that we're only here for a limited time. And Peter knows at some point the people he cares about are going to pass either before him or at some point well after. But it's the additional information that Peter's getting here that start to stir up the question of what does life mean, or are any of the things that we're doing even worth it? Because when J. Jonah Jameson, when he dies, he's replaced in a week. Peter's girlfriend Shay, when she dies, just after paying off her student loans, which is messed up, the future that she had prepared for, it's gone. Randy Robinson, he gets trampled to death while advocating for the less fortunate and trying to speak up during the housing crisis. And in his case, as someone who's always been an advocate on some level since high school, in his last moments, he's thinking like, was it even worth it? Then you got Felicia Hardy, whose luck ran out and she fell to her death, where in her case, everything she's accumulated just gets confiscated by the government. And next you got Elizabeth Brandt, who's been a matriarch to her family, but in her last moment she knows as soon as she's gone, the family's gonna fall apart and everyone's gonna go their own way. And in the case of Norman Osborn, who for a number of years could have been remembered for a number of reasons, whether it been as a villain, a hero, a successful businessman, a father, but over the years the mention of his name, it fades from a place of like, oh look at this guy, to it later becoming a footnote in a story about someone who's greater, until eventually he's forgotten. And right after this, Peter is shown the death of Bailey Briggs, Gwen Stacy, and Miles Morales, where in their case he's told they do not die as martyrs, they do not die as heroes, they just die. And when Peter sees this, he's just like, come on, like they're just kids. And Syra tells him, human children die too, even brave ones. But as Phil gets ready to take Miles to the upper room, Peter steps in to stop Phil, only for Phil to realize this is the Spider-Man from the past, who's still participating in the Covenant, so Phil just phases through him. And as this continues and Phil goes on to claim countless others, Peter's told that this isn't about pain or the pain of dying, because Peter knows pain and he's died before. And it's not even about fear, because this isn't some type of fear tactic, and Peter understands fear. And it's not even about the loss of these individuals either, as great as it may be or as sorrowful as it can be. But what's happening here is with every death that Peter's seeing, it's giving him more clarity and causing him to understand the lack of impact that each individual has in the larger picture. And it's even said here, with a long enough view to the horizon of the cosmos, no single life matters. And again, what's happening to Peter here is a foundational element of his worldview is crumbling more with every death that he bears witness to. And it's pretty mind-blowing when you think of it from the perspective of Peter being someone who wants to save everyone, who tries to save everyone. So in his case, when he sees these countless lives across time being taken, even though he doesn't know everyone means something. But in the scope of the entire cosmos, it's not about the individual as much as it is about the continuation of the collective for however long that's supposed to last. But nonetheless, this perspective flip, it brings Peter to his knees. But even with that being the case, he's still holding that spear. And on top of that, we're shown that it's not even like Syra's getting a kick out of this. And she even admits here that she hates it. But then it's at this time where Calix takes the opportunity to attack Peter, which at this point is not giving him any points or a victory as far as the Covenant's concerned, because Calix already had his chance and he forfeit. But instead, for Calix, who's still trying to get Daddy's approval, he just wants to kill the champion to show Sidorak that he did it. And I'm telling you, I would love to see a moment where Calix goes back to Sidorak like, look what I did, father. Only for Sidorak to be like, yeah, but you failed, boy, get out my face. But regardless, with doing this, Calix ends up killing Peter here. And from what it seems like, he ends up breaking the sphere. But in the scope of the Covenant, Peter's already defeated the both of them. So from here, he just uses the Reed of Ragador, and it allows him to come back. And when he dies, he of course sees Phil Coulson again, who tells Peter that he's more than halfway through and that he should hang in there. But then also, this overlaps into a conversation between Peter and Doctor Strange, where once again, Strange has faced these Scions a number of times. So first he asks Peter about Syra's trial, and he's like, how many did you get through? And he even tells Peter that 171,963 was Strange's record. And he even apologizes for not being able to warn Peter about Syra's trial, because in her case it never changes, though the other Scions, they like to experiment from time to time. So going forward, Strange tells Peter that he's going to need to redouble his efforts, because the trials ahead are going to require skill, imagination, and much more. But at this point, Peter's just like, why? And it catches Strange off guard at first, because he's more or less like, hey, don't forget here, fate of the world hanging in the balance. But at this point, Peter's asking why, because he doesn't understand why they do any of it. So at first, Strange is like, Peter, what you saw, what you felt, I know it's a lot. Because he's been doing this for years, but Peter's just like, a lot? Exactly. And what we are is meaningless. So Peter literally tells Doctor Strange that he quits, and he walks away, with that picture of Phil Coulson on the wall looking greatly disappointed. But yeah, even with Strange trying to tell Peter that he can't quit because the Covenant must be upheld or the world will fall, Peter's just like, let it fall. I don't care. And it's just like, man, so I guess it's just gonna be a wrap for everybody, huh? But I can only imagine that we're just looking at another one of those moments where Peter quits and he eventually comes back around. Because I think every now and then Peter just needs a break. But also with Syra giving Peter this new perspective, I can only imagine that it's gonna help him in the long run. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.